Good day, students. In this video, I'm going to help you understand how to journalize transactions, and you would understand this better if you have seen the previous videos that I have uploaded regarding analyzing business transactions, whether it is an increase or decrease. If you have not watched it yet, you better watch it first before this video. I have included the links in the description box below. Feel free to watch it in your free time. Alright, so now let's begin. For our first transaction, Mr. Arnel Balsa decided to open a computer shop named Makapasar Lagiko Company and invested 500,000 pesos on November 3, 2020. So in journalizing transactions, you have to remember that every transaction has a dual effect. It has a debit and a credit. And just to review, when we say debit, it's in the left side. When we say credit, it's in the right side. When we also say debit, it means it's value received. So again, when we say debit, it means value received. When we say credit, it means value parted with. All right. Now going back to the first transaction, when Mr. Arnold Balsa invested money in the business. So this is on November 3. So what is our debit? So again, when you journalize transactions, you have to put yourself in the situation of the business, or it's like you're the business itself, or you are the accountant of the business. So what did you receive when the owner invests money in the business? You received cash. So let's just put it here. So your debit. DR is the abbreviation for debit. So you received cash. For how much? That is 5,000 pesos. Please take note on how to properly write the currency or money. So you have to have your peso sign, your thousands place, and then your comma, and then your period, and then your centavos. Now you already have your debit. Now what's your credit? What's your value parted with? So of course, that's your capital. And take note that for capital, you have to write the last name of the owner. So that's Balsa, and then comma, the word capital, and how much? It's the same amount. It's 5,000 pesos. And also you have to remember, when you journalize transactions, you must have a short explanation as to what the transaction is about. So since this transaction is about initial investment, so you can simply say initial investment. That's it. Now we already have our transaction for November 3. Alright, so now for the second transaction, In November 7, Mr. Balsa purchased computer parts and supplies amounting to 150,000 pesos. So let's journalize the transaction. So here, November 7. So your debit. So in this transaction, what is your value received? Like what did you receive? You received the computer parts and supplies amounting to 150,000 pesos. And what is your credit or your value parted with? So it's the same thing when you buy something from a store. What will you give to the store owner or to the seller? You will give cash. Of how much? It's the same amount, 150,000 pesos. All right, so for the short explanation, you can say to record the purchase of computer parts and supplies. All right, so now let's go to the third transaction, which is in November 13. He paid 5,000 pesos to ABC Insurance Incorporated for the insurance of his building. Now, let's journalize the transaction. So here we have November 13. So what is your debit? So when you pay an amount for the insurance, what is that? It is an insurance expense. So your debit or your value received is insurance expense. Of how much? That is worth 5,000 pesos. And what is your value parted with? Like what did you give? Of course, when you paid for the insurance, you have given out cash. Of how much? It's the same amount. And your short explanation to record the payment for insurance. Notice how the transactions are written. So for your debit, you have to write it like, for example, if this is your paper, this is the edge of your paper, so it's in the edge of your paper. And then you have to indent. You have to leave maybe ½ inch. You have to leave at least ½ inch before you write your credit. This is for us to identify which one is the debit and which one is the credit. And then another from the edge of your paper going to the explanation, you could leave probably at least 1 inch. So that's how you properly write it. And this is credit. Now for the next transaction. In November 18, Mr. Balsa borrowed 20,000 pesos from BDO. Now let's journalize it. Here we have November 18. So what is your debit? So imagine you are Mr. Balsa and you borrowed money from BDO or any other bank. What did you receive? Obviously, you received cash. Therefore, your debit is cash. How much? That was for 20,000 pesos. And what is your value parted with? What did you give? So most likely, when you borrow money from a bank, you will have a payable because that's an utang. So you can have accounts payable, which is 20,000 pesos. And for your explanation, to record the borrowings. Forgot, this is the credit. By the way, aside from accounts payable, so let us say you signed a note, like a promissory note. So instead of using accounts payable, you may use notes payable. Again, that is only if you signed a promissory note. Alright, so for our next transaction in November 20, Maning Kamot Co. Company purchased 3 computer sets from Makapasar Lagiko Company amounting to 75,000 pesos. Payment is to be made after 30 days. So, let's journalize the transaction. So what is your debit? Alright, so what did you receive? Which company do you own? Is it Maning Kamot Co. Company or Makapasar Lagiko Company? So obviously you own Makapasar Lagiko Company. Therefore, when Maning Kamot Co. Company purchased something from you, then what did you receive? Supposedly, if the transaction was on a cash basis, you received cash. But the question is, did Maning Kamot Co. Company pay cash? The answer is no. Therefore, what's in it for you? So you have a receivable. So your debit is accounts receivable, amounting to 75,000 pesos. And what is your value parted with? Of course, since you have sold 3 computer sets, that's going to be part of your sales income or sales revenue. Which is 75,000 pesos. And for your short explanation, to record sales on account. Why on account? Simply because your customer did not pay you any cash. Therefore, you have a receivable. So that's why you can put the explanation that way, or you can write the explanation that way. Also, to understand it completely, it's a receivable on your end as the seller. It's a payable on Maning Kamot Co. Company because it's their utang to you. So it's a payable to them, receivable for you. For our next transaction, in November 28, Makapasar Lagiko Company paid the water and electricity bill totaling 3,000 pesos. So this is in November 28. So I forgot to write the credit at the top. So for the debit, what's your value received? Alright, so of course, since you have used up the electricity and the water, then you have these two belongs to or belong to utility. So you can say utilities expense amounting to 3,000 pesos. And what is your value parted with? Like, what did you give? Since you paid it, obviously, your credit is cash. 3,000 pesos. And for your short explanation, to record the payment for utilities. Now lastly, for our last transaction in November 30, paid the company technician 10,000 pesos. So let's journalize the transaction. November 30. So let's have the debit and the credit. So what's your value received? So let's analyze the transaction again. Paid the company technician. So that means it's the salary of the technician. So your debit is salaries or salary expense, which is 10,000 pesos. And what's your value parted with? Like, what did you give to your technician? Obviously, you paid cash of 10,000 pesos. For the short explanation, to record the payment of salary. Alright, so we already know how to journalize transactions, debit and credit, as well as the short explanation. So, in order for you to know how to properly journalize your transactions in a general journal, so I have prepared something here below. Alright, so basically this is how a general journal looks like, but you can definitely search from Google, like, how does it look like. So I'm very sorry because like the marks won't come off from the board, so it really looks dirty. So I'm very sorry about that. Now for the date, so you have to write the year first. Like, for example, right now is 2020. You have to write the date, the year, and then go for the month. And then when the first transaction happened, it was in November 3. So for your month, okay, let's change it. Let's erase it. And let's change it to November. And then 3. Do you still remember the transaction in November 3? So it was cash. So put it here. So it's gonna be beside. So you have your cash. So what was cash? Was it in the debit or the credit side? So it was in the debit side. So that's 500,000. So take note that if you're using a journal, it's like it has a separator lines already. So you don't need to like put the comma and the period for, you don't need to put the comma and the period anymore. Because automatically it would be understood like what amount was that. Unless if you're writing in a piece of paper, then you really have to include everything, comma, period, and the pace sign. But if you're writing it in a general journal, not anymore. And what's for the credit? Our credit was Balsa Capital, which is also the same amount, 500,000. Now for your short explanation, to record initial investment. Or simply initial investment. Now let's try another one. In November 7, so since you already have the year and the month here and the day, that you can just definitely write the day, 7. Do you remember the journal entries? So we have computer parts and supplies for our debit. That is 150,000. Oh, sorry. And for your credit, you paid cash. Also 150,000 to record the purchase of computer supplies and parts. All right, so that's it. I'm very sorry, I really have a bad penmanship, especially when I write something on the board, but I hope you understand the topic that we discussed in this video. It's all about journalizing. If ever you have any questions, feel free to write it in the comment section below. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you really learned something. Have a great day.